In a tweet with over 1,800 likes, we have a particularly interesting discussion here going on JP Twitter. And if you find these short, informative segments to be of your liking, please consider liking the video and subscribe to the channel for more every day. Before we go back to JP Twitter, here's some context that you should know. This will be referring to the recent situations with Square Enix, specifically 1, the issue with Live A Live's awful localization, and 2, the issues with Square Enix's recent manga app and the immense backlash they got for their shady pricing structure, censorship, and more. Alright, and hopping back over to JP Twitter, like I mentioned, we have the automatic translation here for the tweet that's approaching 2K likes. However, we're going to use the translation provided by our very own Sarima. Thank you, Sarima, for the translation, which reads: Square Enix is being criticized by overseas manga fans, saying things like, the censorship and system is so bad that users are going to pirate it instead of the proper way, and this will not stop the flow of copyright infringement. And then they say, in order to have less users of piracy, these exaggerated fixes should be stopped. In other words, people in Japan are taking notice of how many fans overseas dislike the Western companies involved with things like localizations, where they censor the material or display other wanton disregard for the original intellectual property through their overt injection of biased partisan politics that have absolutely no place being there. Such things are pushing fans more into piracy, and people in Japan, obviously including companies in Japan, don't want the material pirated. So ultimately, this may be the start of a major turning point where these Japanese companies really take notice of how many Western companies are hurting not just their intellectual property and their sales, however, even also their goodwill. The translation would also include this final note saying that they feel sorry for the publishers because they are likely to be screwed by the government if they don't follow that country's censorship standards. And here's where I have a bit of a divide. I don't actually agree with that. I don't fully disagree with it. I more so disagree with it though. Here's why. To me, there's a scale. On the left, you have money/profit. On the right, you have integrity. If some of these companies are willing to sacrifice so much integrity that they will willingly, release their product in a place where it's going to be heavily censored, sometimes to the extent that some of the context isn't even like the same anymore. I mean, ultimately, I gotta blame them for it because they're the ones deciding to release it in that place. It is a bit complicated, though, because on the other hand, there's like innocent people that live in those countries, for example, that don't like what their government's doing. So should they then be screwed out of the ability to consume that material or forced to pirate it? I don't really know. Like I said, it's a little complicated. Let me know what you think about all that. Also, I generally feel more bad for the developers, not the publishers, because I've seen many situations where the publisher is actually a part of getting the original material censored. Caveat being that, of course, is not always so, and it differs on a case-by-case basis. Anyways, while I somewhat disagree with that last part, I don't want to distract from the main point here, which is everything else that was said before it and how interesting and awesome it is that Japanese people are taking more note of all that's going on here. Speaking of which, you can see similar sentiment shared in the comments. For example, if we skip to the last sentence here, a loud person is an enemy of creation. Now, from what I've seen in the context of various translations I've covered from Japanese Twitter and even Japanese websites and blogs over the years, etc., oftentimes when it ends up saying like loud person or ruckus or things like that, they're referring to these outraged people on social media like Twitter, generally what I refer to as people who are Twitter police or Twitter cops. Another comment reading, it's Chicago in the Prohibition era, and the one below that saying, it's easy to see that expression restrictions aren't good for anyone. Isn't it interesting the stark difference between Japanese Twitter and Western Twitter? Like, you will literally see people in Western Twitter praising censorship, unironically saying it's good. Anyways, I just thought you guys might find this interesting, and hey, big hugs to our JP bros overseas. Love you guys. Let me know what you all think in the comments. As always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the comments and tomorrow for the next one.